Kia ora. Thank you, Ken. Welcome to general public and members of the public. Lovely to see you all here. Thank you for supporting the community board and its initiatives today. Members of the media, thank you for coming along. Staff, there's plenty of you among staff. Thank you for that. Mike Taylor, Chief Executive of QLDC, and he is our executive leadership team attending today, so thank you for coming over, Mike. This meeting is being recorded, so I just want everyone to understand that we will be on camera and it will be published on YouTube and the QLDC website later today. There have been no apologies. Are there any members sick leave of absence between now and the next meeting? John?
Yeah, the next meeting is from the 20th of December to the 10th of January.
Thank you. Got that? Cody?
19th of December till 6th of January. As we reported, the council meeting don't have
Interesting. We should probably check on that. Do that when you double dip there. Any other leaves of absence? Okay, because there's no apologies, we don't have to remove that. Moving on now to declarations of conflicts of interest. I'll start. I note we have a family membership at Wānaka and a close family association with the Wānaka Pony Club, but I don't regard this as a conflict of interest on item 8 of the agenda. Are there any other declarations, John?
Yeah, I have supported membership of Wānaka for recreational cycling. I'm not a mountain biker, a downhill mountain biker. I don't think that affects my decision making to do this. I'm also a trustee of the Opportunity Tracks Trust. I don't think there's any conflict on this.
Anyone else? Fantastic. Let's move on now to matters lying on the table, which there are none, as this is our first meeting. So we move now into the public forum, and we've got 6 people speaking in the public forum. We are got probably the fullest agenda I've seen in the last 3.5 years, so we will be moving through these. There's a 3-minute allocation for speaking, and sometimes we have a little flexibility, but today it will be 3 minutes. If you finish early, there will be time for questions. If you take your 3 minutes, we will have to conclude it at the 3-minute mark. Obviously, we'll tap when we're about 2.5 minutes through. So first person, Ian from Wānaka, around Mountain Travel Plans. Thank you, Ian. The floor is yours.
Good morning, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at today's meeting. For those who may not know me, I'm Ian Greaves, a member of the Wānaka Committee. I'm here to speak in support of the Mount Iron Stage 1 bike trail plans that are on the agenda for approval. My intention today is to keep this presentation brief, as the situation is very simple. We're requesting approval to restore existing biking tracks within a recreational reserve that has undergone a thorough consultation process which has already authorised biking in this reserve. Now is not the time to re-evaluate biking on Mount Iron. That time has passed. We lack certainty on when the broader integrated trail plan will receive approval. It is crucial for Wānaka that this approval is granted today so that we can obtain the necessary resource consents in the first half of next year, allowing for construction during the trail building season next winter. Further delays in this approval will delay us for another year, pushing construction to winter 27 and making the first trails unavailable until summer 27-28. Wānaka is a charitable organisation with over 1,000 members, run solely by volunteers. There's a growing element of frustration within the club on why re-establishing biking on Mount Iron needs to be so difficult. We've partnered with QLDC over many years with some incredibly successful projects, most recently the very successful Lismore Bike Park. We've spent hundreds of volunteer hours and significant club funds with the aim of achieving a fantastic recreational outcome for Mount Iron, but it keeps getting delayed. Now's your opportunity to put a line in the sand and say enough red tape, let's get on and start delivering what the community has asked for on Mount Iron. We, as a club, are motivated and ready. Give us the green light to keep this moving forward. Without this, the motivation to keep spending club funds, fundraising, and spending hundreds of hours of volunteer time will start wearing thin. I also want to make it clear that this early stage work won't limit or conflict with any future trail concepts. These are largely existing trails that will comfortably integrate with a wider trail plan for Mount Iron. We've been working closely with the QLDC Parks team and the Clutha Tracks Trust over the past few months to ensure that this is achieved. In addition, the resource consent process will thoroughly address matters such as ecological and landscape effects. Finally, I do have one important request. The agenda report presents you with two options. In reality, these options are similar, as option 1 offers a way to make future adjustments to the Stage 1 trail plans. This uncertainty creates concerns for the where we risk losing funds and volunteer time spent on adjustments to a future resource consent. We request that a third option be considered, simply approving the Stage 1 mountain bike trails with no qualifiers. Thank you for your time and thank you for answering questions.
Thank you, Ian, for being on 3 minutes. Thanks for staying down. They've just got a second over, so thank you, Ian. Thanks for doing the coming. And we've got Ian next, and then guys following Ian.
Good morning, my name is Anne Stephen. I'm speaking on behalf of the Lakes Equestrian Access Group. This is an informal group of local equestrians formed under the New Zealand Equestrian Access Network Incorporated. NZE was set up to improve the safety and well-being of all New Zealand riders and their horses through the promotion and preservation of recreational horse riding trails in New Zealand's public spaces. A founding principle is that people who wish to ride a horse for recreation should be able to identify and have safe access to public places. The EAGs are informal groups set up to give effect to the national objectives at the local scale. The Upper Clutha Lakes EAG and Wānaka-Upper EAG have recently had positive introductory meetings with council staff to begin the process of ensuring the equestrian community is heard and provided for equitably with other recreational user groups. The Upper Clutha Lakes EAG recently met with QLDC staff team working on the Mount Iron Recreation Reserve to submit a proposal for re-establishing equestrian use. The reserve offers a unique riding experience quite different to anywhere else in our area. There was regular horse riding on Mount Iron until about 2010. A number of the existing tracks in the reserve were developed for horse riding. We have had around 50 supportive equestrian responses to the proposition for riding trails on Mount Iron in an informal poll. To be transparent, there were also a few unsupportive responses. These persons also tended to oppose mountain biking. In our view, horse riding aligns well with the primary purpose and vision and with a number of policies in the Reserve Management Plan. Horse riding is compatible with pedestrian activities. It is highly consistent with the character of the reserve. It is a very rural activity. It is quiet and slow, supporting value of natural decent life. Significantly, it needs very little trail development and requires significantly less physical alteration than walking or mountain biking. This is important where so much of the reserve has high ecological and other landscape values and is to be kept as natural as possible. Horse riders are happy to share trails with other users. In my experience, people enjoy their encounters with horses. We are pleased that the Council is developing an integrated trail network plan, which we have requested includes horse riding trails. It is our view that there should be no preferential trail approval in advance of the completion of the integrated plan. As the Council report states, this prioritises one user group and will prevent opportunities for other types being considered, even though they may be a better fit. Mountain biking would become the tail that wags the dog. This is inconsistent with the spirit of an integrated trail plan in our view. We respectfully request that all user types, including equestrian use, be considered equally together from the outset and form the integrated trail plan.
And you're amazing. 2 seconds to spare. Thank you very much for your clear and well-articulated proposition. Thank you for that. Guy Stephen coming to speak.
Good morning. My name is Guy Stephen. I've lived in Wānaka for nearly 25 years. During my time living in Wānaka, I have spent a lot of time exploring Mount Iron and know the informal trails on Mount Iron very well. Since the land was gazetted as reserved in March 2023, I have been a regular visitor and explorer of Mount Iron, in particular the northern slopes thereof. Later this meeting, the Board will consider whether to grant Point Wānaka permission to proceed with Stage 1 of its proposed mountain bike trail network. I would urge the Board to decline consent. There are a number of reasons why I consider it should not do so. But the one I would like to concentrate on here is the fact that in my observation, The lower, uphill and downhill tracks included in the Stage 1 plan are based on unauthorised tracks that have been constructed since the land became reserved in 2023. They were not existing tracks before the land was purchased by the council. In August 2023, my wife and I, while exploring the lower slopes of Mount Iron on the Hidden Hill side, came across a track that was clearly in the early stages of construction. There was evidence of recently cut branches and recent clearance of the ground cover to mark a track. Council was notified at the time, and that notification to council resulted in both the council and Mike Wānaka making public statements through social media stating that track building on Mount Iron was not permitted. Mike Wānaka now seeks permission to use that track as a downhill exit from Mount Iron. More recently, I've discovered what would appear to be another track in the same vicinity as Mike Wānaka's proposed uphill track. Whilst the alignment is not exactly the same, some of the track is as proposed by Mike Wānaka. I would qualify what I mean by discovered. The track in question has evolved over time with sections of proposed track marked on the ground with rocks and branches, slowly over time being connected through cutting of paths through the Wānaka to the point where only earlier this year did I find the track was complete from bottom to top. It would be now possible to ride a bike around the full circuit, whereas in March 2023 that would not have been possible. I have no evidence that Mike Wānaka or any of its members were involved in the creation of this track, but it has, I would suggest, been created by members of the wider mountain bike community, and it is on behalf of the wider mountain biking community that Mike Wānaka is advocating. Neither of these two tracks follow the path of historic informal tracks. Both tracks are of recent creation, and at least one of them appears to be integral to Mike Wānaka's Stage 1 plans. Neither of them appear in maps that were in circulation when the reserve plan was being debated. In my view, granting consent to Mike Wānaka's consent would be to reward those who have disregarded the rules, and in my view would not be in the spirit of the reserve management plan. These tracks have been created without the opportunity of there being a full ecological study, and on a recent visit with my wife Anne, she identified a number of locations in very close proximity to the tracks where there were threatened plant species. I would urge the board, when it considers this matter later this meeting to decline Mike Wānaka's application and to have the bike trails considered in conjunction with the overall trail plan.
Thank you, Guy. Got a little bit over, but well spoken, so thank you for your participation today.
Thanks, Grant.
The fourth, Andrew, you're going to come up. And is Kim mentioned? Did I see Kim? Oh, you are. Thanks, Kim. No, you're up next, Kim. I just didn't see you walk in. Andrew first. Andrew Bartholomew, you're from the Inhill Residents Association, and we'll be hearing you and that starts now.
Hello, I'm Andrew Bartholomew, a member of Hidden Hills Residents Association. I want to talk to item 8 of your agenda today, Stage 1 mountain bike trails in the Mount Iron Reserve, and explain why I think we should all vote for option 2 and not option 1. Point 22 of this item states that the proposed trails have been reviewed against Mount Iron Recreational Management Plan's objectives and policies relevant to trail building and mountain biking in the reserve, and that they largely align. They most certainly do not in at least 10 of the stated objectives. The stated advantages of option 1 are weak at best. The proposed multiple trails go right across a significant natural area and are designed only for the privileged use of advanced grade 4 and expert grade 5 bikers only, with only the uphill track suitable for intermediate grade 3 cyclists. The stated disadvantages are, on the other hand, compelling. These alone should lead you to not vote for option 1. Options 2's advantages are compelling and whose disadvantages are extremely weak. The point about the risk of further potential informal trail building as a result of not having authorised mountain biking trails being completely spurious. I ride mountain bikes. Wānaka is not starved of fantastic mountain bike trails. I urge you all to vote for option 2 and to allow time for proper informed consultation on all matters, not only with respective groups but with interested and affected members of the public. Hidden Hills is a small community served by largely unmarked no-exit roads. There is no designated parking on Hidden Hills. We already experience parking difficulties above and within the designated the turning circle on Hidden Hills Drive and as well on roadside berms. Also with people parking on both sides of the road causing blockages. Not all users of any approved biking trails on Mount Iron will arrive on 2 wheels. Parking problems will only get worse if biking access is from Hidden Hills Drive. Objective 6.4.6 of the RMP states, limit parking to main arrival areas. Hidden Hills Drive is not a main arrival area. We suggest that you reorient the access to any mountain biking trails to the main arrival areas of Highway 84 and Allender Reserve, where there are also necessary comfort facilities. Yes, this would necessitate a widening of the path from that area to accommodate cyclists, or a separate zigzag uphill cycle track could be created at the lower half of the former sheepdog trial area, which could then cut into the scrub land above the walking track and up to the proposed bike lane. We respectfully request that you involve our organisation in the further consultations on this matter, as we are identified in point 29 of this item as being affected by or interested in this matter and by being nearby residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate the time you've come up to speak with us here tonight. So, kia ora. 5 is Convention with the Wānaka-Upper Club. Thank you for coming along.
Hi, I'm Kim from Wānaka-Upper. We are here today to see the sort of story for the Wānaka-Upper to build a new club rooms. Why the current building is perhaps of its 100 years old. It's had 4 renovations. It is starting to become more perfect purpose. We are doing a current minor renovation at the moment, which is the frontage and toilets, which has been asbestos and some structural issues. So renovating is looking like not a good option, and a new build would be more appropriate as it would enable us to carry on operating without disruption of renovation. The need for it is huge because of the growth and membership at the golf club. We're currently averaging 1 new member every day, and that is set to be continuing. So our growth, we need to improve our facilities for our members and visitors. Some questions that you may have. I've actually brought some books from the history of Wānaka Golf Club, which might be beneficial for new Wānaka board members to understand the rules and the arrangement here. So some questions you might have: why can't you add on to the upstairs of the current building? I'd like to see it's not very good structurally. What is the cost of the new build? Probably around 10 million. What is the likely time we started? Well, we will have to generate funds and do a lot of fundraising, so we won't have it for at least 3 to 5 years, and we can't apply for grant funding until we get this sort of through this process. Will it change the way we operate? No, it will not change the way we operate. We will be operating the same hours and license. It's just a nice facilities. Will generate interest in club and golf and improve for the game in the future. What are the benefits of the new build golfers? Just a nicer environment. The new facility that we are proposing is on the hill, close to the driving range, so it will interface with play and first tee and starting holes and practice facilities. So people using the club rooms will be more spectator and will be able to interact more with the game of golf in the new location. It's in the hill. It's currently in a place where there's gorgeous concrete paths leading up to that practice facility. So the new build location will be minimal impact in terms of creating a footprint that's already on the well-developed site. Also the golf club will lose car parking with the construction of the roundabout in 2027 at Golf Course Road and Valentine Road. So we need to areas to create more car parks and more club storage. A junior golf club is growing rapidly, and those people want to go scooter, bike, walk to the golf club. We We need to provide storage to store the equipment on site.
You come to the top of the 3 minutes, so this has been wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to share in closing?
No, any questions?
We won't have time for questions, but the paper was pretty thorough.
Yes,
And
thank you,
we will be
thank you.
discussing, yes, yeah, the teachers, but definitely we'll look forward to
So
discussing
these on
it
the right,
later.
please.
Yes, fantastic. It's my daughter's Christmas present for me, so thank you.
Thank you.
So that's something we're magically glad. Thank you, Kevin, for that. And for everyone who's participated. Finally, we've got David Howard. David, Chief of Shores. David is the Chair of the Clutha Tracks Trust. And looking forward to you as our last public forum speaker today.
Thanks everybody for allowing me to talk today. I'll start my stopwatch. So we are here to discuss the Mount Iron Track Development Plan. From the start, there's been a reserve management plan, and the applicant's Tracks Trust position was that yes, we're happy for biking to proceed so long as it's developed in sort of an approach that includes all users and a network of trails that have been thought out. So we are supportive of Wānaka-Upper and Stage 1 developing for three main reasons. Is we have developed a concept plan, and we think this aligns with the principles, our strategic plan, and it caters for all users, so we're quite happy with the way that is progressing. That's our primary requirement. Secondary is a staged approach. We think it's an appropriate way to develop Mount Iron. It's very uncommon to have, I've heard this term, sort of a full and final integrated trail plan. This is something that you might see in a small development area, maybe a really intensive trail network, where you have to maximise the use of the space in a very known controlled environment. Quite uncommon for that sort of approach to be used in this environment. And I look at things like the Clutha Tracks Trust network plan for our region that develops as very organic. It's got a general direction, working on a Banks Peninsula, the Christchurch strategic plan there, driving trails Banks Peninsula. It's very organic. They have a concept, but it adapts as land changes and use changes over time. Block Hill as well, we developed 10 kilometres of shared biking down Block Hill for the council down there. And that's been staged with ring fence, a highly designed area, and the rest of it's going to be sort of organically developed over multiple years. So this idea of a full and final plan is a bit rigid and a little uncommon, in my view. Thirdly, the risks as well of doing nothing, I think are high. We've already heard that people are looking for experiences up on a hill. Walkers, bikers, there's all tracks and stuff swirling around all over the place. So this will happen unless you provide the experience that people are looking for. So they'll go on track themselves. Public can get disgruntled, and what happens in these situations is you generally get a degradation of the environment as people just willy-nilly go everywhere. And you get multiple lines, particularly when you get sort of wet and damp track areas as well. So developing it sort of fast in a controlled manner actually prevents that degradation as well. People will just go, if you provide something, and they'll just go and use it. That's getting close, that's 15 seconds left.
You can start to wrap up now. I'm
Yeah.
leading with a couple of the others.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, we're happy for the stage 1 to go ahead. The area of stage 1 is quite confined geographically, so it makes sense. And then our view is successive stages then need to be tested and refined as we learn, probably over several years. And that has to be controlled in the way that they develop, but we think that stage 1 now caters for everyone. And it should include walking tracks that we're identified as well. So it's not just about biking, it should be a stage 1 walking and biking development together.
So thank you. Thank you for your time. Thanks for taking time out of your day to everyone that's come along and participated in this meeting. So kia ora to you all. Thank you. Just before I move on to the next stage of the agenda, I neglected to say that because hidden out back there, welcome to Mayor John Glover. So thank you for attending, John, as well as John Mitchell, a councillor and a former councillor, Ned Shaw, I saw just stuck in at the end there. And great to see you, so thank you for participating in the meeting and the public side of things as well. Going to move on to the next agenda item, which is confirmation of the agenda. Has anyone got anything they would like to suggest that has changed or received? If not, then I will move that the agenda be confirmed without alteration or addition. Would you like to second that? John, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried that. Confirmation of the minutes from the last meeting, which was on the 4th of November, when we all got sworn in. Has anyone got anything that they would like changed on those minutes? Not that I will move that we confirm the minutes or the community board meeting on the 4th of November, the second community meeting. All those in favour? Carry that as well. Well, let's get into the substantive part of the meeting, and that's item 1, which is the temporary road closure for the benefit of Challenge Wānaka. And go ahead, great to see you again. Thank you for coming over. As always, your report was full and wholesome, so thank you. Anything you'd like to add in the meantime?
Okay, take it as well.
Fantastic. So this is an item which is perennial annual item that comes up where Challenge Wānaka, a large multi-sport event, is what we call a cycle road closure to allow the event to go ahead and increase road safety. I'm not going to go around the table. I will just ask if those that have questions for Kim or observations, and looking for options here. So, Cody.
I was just wanting to, there are a lot of road closures and it's quite disruptive in some ways. I'm wanting to just get your sense on how it's compared to last year in terms of what was last year and what the additions this year, and just talk through why that's been considered.
No, that's fine. So in the breakdown of the scheduled road closures, we've actually split the road closures so it's actually a lot more clearer to the public. We found that feedback from last year was that it wasn't clear that the side roads were also going to be closed, if we were closing certain main roads as well. So we have added additional points within the report of those closures, mainly the ones that are getting out towards Glenview Bay. The additional closures based on the route that I want to take.
Were there other considerations to road closures for the road out to Triple Cone, for instance, to better manage some of the concerns that we're still hearing to this day from other user groups?
No, unfortunately, I haven't had any complaints come back directly through to me from the publication from businesses that use that particular part of the road. I haven't, but the applicant has been conditioned to ensure that any of those concerns that are raised from the application that they do, you would see them mitigated or passed through the council to mitigate.
I did see that in our report. It's a small concern because we've heard this morning from jet boat operators that they have been as well. I think that's all the questions I had for the meantime.
The Mount Spine, the same road that Cody's talking about, has it always been full road closure or normally single lane? And on that, why does it need to be double lane?
Sure. So it's more of a safety aspect, and particularly they're closing it through certain times. So you might have found that the split there, if they open it between, I believe it's 6:30 and 7:30 for an hour to allow businesses and people to either meet or enter, and then they close it during the main part of the competition, and then they will reopen it again for that same businesses and investments to try and access, just so that we're not closing it completely from 6:30 to 6:30, for instance. And then if there are any emergencies or require access, then the local traffic management team will be able to account for those movements through the competition.
So it hasn't ever been a full road closure before?
It is considered a full road closure, just providing
Previous
access.
years.
Yes.
Nikki.
So this is obviously a commercial item, so you can keep that. And I guess that point to the regulation in the states that these individuals' satisfaction and that's district council and national officers will be bigger and one background that works. But at sea, we're talking about access for commercial operators and access must enable customers to reach their objectives. Then they have meet the expectations of the Wānaka. I'm just wondering about the practicality of meeting our expectations, everything's done, meeting on this. How will that be dealt with in practice if there are concerns? I'm not sure what our expectations are.
No, that's fine. I'm happy to take your lead. Generally, if there were any concerns or comments that came back and required the community board's comments or approval, then I would normally send that directly to to the chair to spread throughout the community board prior to the event taking place to make sure that those comments are captured from
So you will take comments and feed them back to the chair and take some.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
I have concerns, having been here for 20 years and seen many different challenges. I think it's a great thing for Wānaka. My concern is that I have had more, as an ex-cafe, a lot of my customers coming back to me and going, okay, I'm doing what? And the issue being that they're saying that they will allow some access. And I get the safety aspect of it as well. My problem is though that we're effectively saying to these businesses that it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to operate it in any kind of normal way, which effectively means that we are asking these businesses to not operate during this time. And I totally get the issue with regards to allowing businesses and services residents to get through, especially when we've got cyclists going out and coming back, so both directions are happening at the same time. You're trying to get say a jet boat and a truck through to take it down the river. I don't know what the solution is other than finding a different course, but I'm not still in that I think next year. The other thing is that they say that they've been in touch with all of the businesses and with residents, but have they told us what the responses were?
I do believe that that should be included in one of your attachments as who they contacted or got a response from. So whether or not they have an updated version, I can ask the applicant for that for you.
The other thing, traffic management plans, we had one recently that was on Wānaka, where that wasn't necessarily discussed with the community. But I'm not saying we should have approval, but there's stuff that we know about local road shares, say, that challenge might not think of, and staff is going to the final approval of the traffic management plan might not think of as well. Look at like this one, Brett's coming just briefly through us, just there, and quick look at it and go, what about? I have no idea what about might be, but those are my concerns. It's just trying to work out how we can facilitate the race and keep businesses operating. And I'm not quite sure exactly what that looks like other than lots of people in lots of different places just watching.
No, I understand, and unfortunately that is probably outside the scope of the request of the particular road closure for me, but I can pass those comments on to, for instance, Tony, who does the approval of the traffic management plan. I can get him to send the chair the copy of what the traffic management plan is proposed and or it's approved ready, and then the applicant is conditioned, obviously within the road closure itself, to try and remedy concerns from other users of the road during that time of the competition that we have the closures that are in place. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a balance of risk, isn't it? So we're hearing from you that there's a risk to safety, and that's why the proposed change is in front of us in terms of that aspect of the overall closure, and then the risk of businesses not being able to operate, and indeed the safety issues for residents in that whole stretch. And those are the issues that have come to the fore and we've heard about. And I guess from our perspective, what we need is to make sure that those risks are mitigated, whether it's by you, by QLDC staff, or by the applicant. And I suppose the fact that there are a number of concerns are putting on the table might indicate that we're seeking further assurance of ownership on it. It's managed, but that would be sort of my request back to the applicant is that what is said in the report, which is that these things will be addressed, that compromises will be worked out, whatever it requires, and whether that is a change in the hours, and maybe it's reconsidered a one-way closure. Like Chris, I don't know what the exact solutions are. There are other alternate places that businesses can operate from for the day that they wouldn't want to be allowed to. I don't know that detail. Yeah, it's not really my job to get into that detail, but I guess I'm just reflecting the hesitation that we have because we are aware of these issues.
No, I get that. Unfortunately, the applicant does have a high responsibility of meeting those conditions and making sure that those concerns that you voiced are some agreement has become between the applicant and those businesses or people that are using their road on that day. So the only thing I can do is make sure that the conditions that we've requested feedback from that the applicant does send those through prior to the event happening, and then I can forward those onto the community board chair.
I just have one other comment. With regards to the Arbor Strip, last year they stopped parking the night before the road was supposed to start.
Yeah.
And we were people that weren't happy with that. We're going to have parking restrictions in place prior to the traffic management plan starting. We're going to need to take a discussion about that as well.
So again, that's outside the scope of my job, but Tony will be the one that you'll be able to have any of those questions forwarded through to regarding the traffic management plan and in specific the no parking.
Okay, look, challenges is a major event for us. It's got a long history here. It's what Wānaka is known for. We get 3,000 athletes coming in here and sharing a great space here, and it's a key part of our tourism program and our attraction, as well as our engagement with the schools program and secondary schools. And we get secondary schools from all around the world. We have a road here that for 363 days of the year is unencumbered. For 2 days of the year, we ask for it to be prioritised for the safety of 3,000 vulnerable people that are, for a particular point in time, using that road. I think what this happens every year. I think that there is a continued refining using the pilot vehicle going through. There has been much better mapping. I think there's much better communication. We've only had, it's been Saturday afternoon, to be honest, dealing with this particular organisation, going backwards and forwards here, providing that information. Out of all the businesses and all the families and everything that are down there, we've had one individual that feels it's important enough to send a detailed email 3 hours before the meeting. I understand that, but I think that what we do, we need to have a mature conversation about this into balance, and this is something that is really, really important to the community. What we do need to do is to make sure that you can take some responsibility for that, is that particular organisation that has always had issues with this road closure gets some special attention from challenge, and I think that would just calm things down just a little bit there. So I think that is making sure that Jane and her team come together there. So I think that this continues to be iterated. I also think that if we as a community board have concerns about this, we need to ensure that Challenge is addressing this sort of 11 months out from the event and not 3 months out from the event. And I think that if that's going to require them to look at relocating this event like it has been before, I think that needs to be done. I don't think we're in a position to have a huge influence and effectively sabotage the event 3 months out. So that's where I understand that. Is there any other comments? Yeah.
I just think it's well said, and there's all we can't sabotage it at this point. We're going to do it the best we can do. We just need to get a process of feedback and event debriefs and all of that stuff working so that it can be in their direction. Because if this is a number of days, every week for the business, that is a lot over time, and we can improve things.
We have a precedent here when there was a lot of issues around AMP showing parking about 2 years ago. What we managed to do is start a much closer relationship between the community board and the AMP association, a number of meetings. I met the chairs and everything else like that, and that's dissipated away. I think, Georgia, what we can do is make sure that there is a debrief after this challenge, that we get Jane and her team in and actually proactive around what is your plans for the 2027 event, and use our initiative in leading that. So let's take that offline. I'm happy to move that this paper gets accepted. In fact, I will move that we note the contents of the report, we approve the temporary road closure and everything else in that paper through to authorising the following road closing schedule. Does anyone like to second that? I've got Nikki there, so all those in favour? Aye. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much for coming. So I go here because item 2 is something that may sound very familiar. It's a temporary road closure in relation to the Melbourne Tattoo event, and it is the I think that's from here much less complex road closure because it is the road, which is actually the road that goes from White Bendu up to there. Has anyone got questions around or comments around this application for road closure?
I'm happy with this.
Well, I'm just going to point something, and this is a little bit off topic, but it's on my mind. It's that when challenge us for road closures, etc., they donate quite a lot to the community, to Kākano, Rosary, Friends and Mac, all get contributions from that. When AMP show closes the roads, there was a lot of donations made and granting made to local organisations because of that. The Wānaka-Upper has been running successfully, and there is no contribution to any Wānaka organisations. Okay? But there has been $90,000 given to the Queenstown Trails Trust from Wānaka-Upper, which is fantastic. I feel that there should be, we could encourage that there is a balance there, and that the Wānaka-Upper Trails Trust gets some recognition as well, since that we are the staging post and the starting post of Wānaka-Upper event, and our role in that, there is a road closure. I did email the organiser about that a year ago and got quite a blunt response, so it's been sitting with me a little bit, just sort of saying that, just a little bit of recognition that this has, we are using public roading and infrastructure here, and it is taking up staff time and our time as well. I'm wondering whether there could be a note put in that we would encourage the Wānaka-Upper to look at maybe making a small contribution alongside what Queenstown Trails Trust gets to the Wānaka-Upper Trails Trust, and that would be nice for us to develop our trails here as well within Queenstown. Does anyone come? I don't think we need to move that, but is there some comfort for having that?
So that, given that the council doesn't require the ordinance, we've got into this involved, and that's what should come from the board itself. I don't rightly know. Rather than council staff.
Have you already had a conversation? Okay. I will take it. I will take it that we will, on behalf of the board, sort of acknowledge that. And they choose to dismiss it, that's absolutely fine. But I think as social licensing goodwill, social licensing maybe that encourage that. Cody, you would like to move that this report be accepted in the road closure for Wānaka-Upper be?
Yep.
There's a move. Kathy, seconding that. All those in favour of item 2? Against? Carry that. Thank you, team. Oh my goodness, deja vu, it's Groundhog Day. We have a temporary road closure application coming through. It does all come this time of the year, obviously, because we did have the elections coming through, so there's a lot of this is called the Wānaka AMP show. Would you like to add anything to this report?
No, and this one is
This one is.
taken as read as well.
Thank you. Here's some questions around item 3's request for road closure. Chris,
Just one thing, when we did the Mount Management Plan, one of the things that we specifically made eligible was parking on the land on Orange Town. And they didn't use it last year, not this year, and I believe that it worked pretty well last time, but it was 2 years ago. And I can just ask some questions there.
Unfortunately, it hasn't included the location of that parking right. I think the parking right that they used last year is a repeat of the same position that they are using this year. I can ask the applicant as to why.
That was all good. I know that the first time that we used it, there were, I think it seemed we were going to about 200 or 300 cars, 600 parked there, and a lot of them actually parked and walked because it was a beautiful day. My thoughts are that because it's on the main highway, it's so much more visible, we can encourage them to use it, and management plan allows it, we should.
I'm sure the management plan does it, but it doesn't. I'm pretty sure the management plan, the reserve management plan says parking for events that are associated with the line. So anyway, when that's not blue, we talk about it because the parking lot is on the other side of the minimum centre by Forest Terrace. Okay, any other questions or observations around item 3? Great, would anyone like to move? Thanks, Chris. So Chris, you're moving that the community board accept contents of the report, and we note and accept second that. Got Nicola King, all those in favour? Aye. Carry that unanimously. Very good. Item 4, making good progress through everyone's questions as we move through the agenda. Thank you, Kim. Hi, Matthew. Good to see you from the Parks team and Dale's coming in as well. So this is being for approval for the Wānaka Golf Club to construct a new clubhouse, which Kim spoke to in the public forum today. Would you like to add anything to the report as tabled?
Just say a couple of words if that's okay. First, I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Matthew Judd. I'm Parks Property Planner, so I deal with primarily property-related matters on reserve land. Dave Winterburn with me, who's our Parks Manager. The reason we're here with this item is the Wānaka Golf Club is seeking approval to build a clubhouse on the Wānaka Recreation Reserve, and it requires Minister of Conservation's consent, which is delegated to full council. This proposal is consistent with the Wānaka Recreation Reserve Management Plan and the Reserves Act 1997, and the club is seeking approval to provide certainty and allow further investment into this proposal. So, I'm going to take any questions.
Various questions or solutions around any time?
Just around if there's a demolition of the existing club, how does that look? Does that need a separate commission or not? And how involved will the company in managing that?
Good question. I'm not actually 100% sure on that. I know that they've indicated that some of the existing building might be demolished to make way for additional car parking and some storage space, but I'm not 100% sure what.
It's not a consequential issue, it's just more around, it's just a managing that process. I was just wondering.
I don't think that's a reserves act issue. It's probably more a consenting issue.
Maybe quite a lot of consent in that industry.
I don't know if you, sorry. I'm not sure if you actually have this answer or if Kim does. I think it's a great idea, but in the paper we don't get any information on how big what the capacity is for the new clubhouse, and I'll be interested because it's going to take 5 years, and if you're getting a new member every day, that's nearly 2,000 extra members. Do you think that it is big enough? Doing it right now and then aiming for 5 years growth, I just want it to then, is there an opportunity to change the plans from what we approve it now?
Good question, and I would almost expect some changes, and if there are significant changes, they will have to come back and come through this process again. I don't want to speak for Kim yet, but I don't think that they could have the capacity for 2,000 extra members. So there will be a cap of membership at some point in time, because they just don't have the capacity to run a concourse with that many people.
Yeah, right. And then the other question, which again you may not be able to answer, but I guess if we're going to build a lovely new building, big space, it would be really nice for it to be able to be used for the community as well, given that we have a lack of facilities. And I don't know what the rules are.
We're doing it as a golf club as well, in application, and it's the prerogative to build what they like better. We are building one reserve, and so our sort of remit is limited to, are we authorising this to go to the next stage of resourcing consent, how it's designed and its functionality. I think it's just something maybe we need to take offline and encourage them to think of that, but it is the golf club's prerogative around that.
Well, in their constitution, they are commended, they are a charity, and they do serve the community.
Can I just make one comment on that? And I think it's a very relevant comment that Simon's raised. I mean, it is always an issue when clubs on reserves with a purpose start to look for other things, and that's something that the golf club and any club needs to be very mindful of. It's not automatic that they can start as a golf club and then become a de facto function centre. That often requires separate approvals. So I think the key for the golf club and for any club in any of our reserves is to think very carefully about what their long-term purpose is and make sure we talk with the staff so they're not caught out by the reserve management plan or the Reserve Act. So they both are on.
And on that, functionality will affect their funding applications down the line. So yeah, that will
So again, our role here is to approve the next stage for the golf club to go forward and accept that and do their planning and resource consenting. Is there anything else that we need to ask Matt or Dave before we move this? Okay, do we want to move? Yes. So Cody is moving that item 4 that we make contact with the report, recommend to council that we grant minister's approval to the Wānaka Golf Club for a planned new clubhouse on the Wānaka Golf Course Recreation Reserve. Anyone like to second that? John Hamilton, those in favour? Aye. Okay, that unanimously. Thank you, team. And item 5, I'm going to stick around for you because up on Forest Heights, just below Second Forest, there is a new connector tower going in for telecommunications, etc. to Dave Roger. Yeah, you are. You went here on one sheet to see Roger, from the Poly team, and they are seeking an easement to provide services of power issuing into this new tower. Anything you'd like to add?
I'll take the support.
Have you had a question around the existing versus new easement?
Yes, I was just curious about, so this is being, the reason this is coming before us is because it's not, what's currently there isn't adequate for the new tower. So I just wondered, is it following the same path? Because I don't think the old pre-existing connection is shown on the diagram.
No, so the reason this is coming is the previous easement that was granted was a temporary easement, and this is technically expired, so they're seeking new approval for a new easement, and it is taking a slightly different path. So this is a completely new easement, and it's allowed for power and telecommunications as well, fibre optic cable. The previous easement was just for power, so they're upgrading power and telecommunications.
Nikki?
Sorry, I'm being relatively new here. I'm not sure where the current tower is that in the same location.
So there's a current tower which is across the boundary, which is in the sticky forest, pasture land, and they're moving it about 5 metres from sticky forest into the reserve. Very close proximity.
That has come forward before we looked at that. Any other questions? Observations? Okay, who would like to move? Anyone like to move this? Okay, so Chris, you're moving that item 5 that we make the contents of the report, recommend to council that we approve this easement for Connector across the Forest Heights Recreation Reserve. Would like to second that? Thank you, Nicola King. All those in favour?
No.
Yeah, we'll carry that unanimously. Thank you very much. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Roger. Thanks for coming over. Short and sweet, have you? Yeah, very good. Okay, Catherine. Just to rewrite this content, the community board's been working really hard since to help get the community in a really strong position to influence the annual plan and from that into the long-term plan. So we've looked at prioritising a lot of projects, and it's been based on a lot of feedback that we have received. The finance team, and Catherine in particular, has been really engaging with us and helping us get to a position to be able to influence the annual plan. And the paper in the agenda is a culmination of some pretty intensive work over the last few weeks. Catherine, anything you'd like to add to the report that is tabled?
I guess the next steps. So this will obviously go to council as part of the February council meeting, but before that there's a workshop on the annual plan, which they've already been provided with this list, so it's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're sort of formalising up in some of the conversations that have been happening in workshops and planning and strategy sessions to get this in front of the council to give the councillors a clear understanding of where the community board would like prioritisation for funding over the coming 12 months and then beyond. I've got a couple of comments, but I will open up everyone else to any questions or comments.
Just one comment there. Obviously that's early to check the community board hasn't gone out and consulted with most of these projects that have been in the system for a while. And just to know that this isn't final, certainly from my perspective, that things will evolve and we will be engaging with the community and in terms of the long-term plan. This may shift slightly, it may not, but I think we need to just say that to the community
I think we're in a much better position to champion projects for that. Just two things that I picked up, and I will come back to you on these, but I'm not sure they're going to It's the stage 4 pathway. We would actually like funding for that in the 26 and 27 annual plan. That wasn't as specific as it could have been there. It sort of talked around it and about the budget, etc. All the rest of the recommendations that had the funding is a lot of scoping, planning, design, etc. This is actually for one that could actually see something physically being done in Wānaka and Clutha in the next 12 months. So the 12 months from June when the new financial year comes into play. Yeah, well, Dave's going to come up, but I think this is a direction from the community board there that was sort of just lost a little bit in translation there, and you might say that will be difficult, that will tell you that's all fine, but we know that this is where the community board prioritisations, it's then up to the council to decide how something will happen, but that doesn't change the fact that we would like to see funding for that pathway in 26-27. The second one was when we talk about 8.3, we talked around shared paths, and I've sent you the text for this. It is very much written in the context of if the National Land Transport Plan doesn't allow for subsidised funding for the network, the travel network, we won't put any money towards that. And I think that is slightly misreading the community board's intentions, in that community board would like to see that the funding in the current budget remains as stated, so there's already money in there, and we'd like that to continue. And then 2, staff allocated to prepare for the next NLTP funding round to enable the above-named projects to be project ready if NCTA funding is available. So that is all good, we're getting ready for it. Otherwise, these projects would proceed unsubsidised. So if there is money in the budget that is predicated on receiving central government funding, and that central government funding doesn't occur, does that mean that money automatically drops out? Or does it just sit there and go, it can be invested, but it's probably going to get 50% of what it would have got otherwise?
It would sit in the LGP as a project still,
Yes.
and councillors would decide whether to go ahead because it would be unfunded part of it.
Yes, exactly. Which what we did with the source of Wānaka is we did decide to go ahead without co-funding or subsidised funding. So the way it reads at the moment is sort of, it's not as clear there, but the community was intention that we would like to proceed unsubsidised, if that money is already there, as opposed to it just then getting moved another 10 years or until subsidised funding comes available.
I think the intention would be it remains as stated in the LGP. It would just be a choice then around the funding.
Right. I just think that reading this tied up slightly. I had emailed that to you. Those are the 2 areas I just thought that, based on your discussions previously, was just nutting slightly there. You comfortable with that?
Do you want to note that in that?
I've got you in there for those 2 there, so we can put those 2 in there around the stage 4 pathway and 8.1B and 8.3. I think that is in keeping with what we discussed at the workshop and the intention of the board, and whether you want to note that in the minutes, I think that's what we were asking to take you to. If you want to specify that, that's governance team's decision. Anything else around the annual planning process team?
I just had a couple of comments on it.
Go for it.
Thank you for coming to us early. I think it's really great. There's only just, when we talk about the Wānaka, the WASR fund, we say this project could be, there's a few references to it, this project could be funded by the WASR fund. Shouldn't say partially, just if other people are reading it, I feel like we're not going to, it reads like it's fully funded. For example, the performing arts and the sports fields. And I think it might be somewhere else, but the lakefront development.
Well, GT was certainly one where I think it said that this could be funded, and then it said the word partially.
Did?
Yes. I'm not sure if that's in the paper.
It's not in the paper, no.
What page are you
Oh,
referring to?
sorry, 121, and then
I thought you
123.
made some amendments to that. You did. I think that might be the next version.
And 123.
So now put them apart and do
Yes.
this case.
There was certainly intention that these,
Except for arts and music.
I mean, for the performing arts centre, it's obviously part funded because the Wānaka sales reserve wouldn't go anywhere near for paying for the whole thing anyway, so it would be part funded. Anything else, Nicola?
No.
Anything else, Stephen? Okay. You look, yeah.
Great. No, just everything's going quite fast.
Oh, that's all right.
No, I think, yeah, like to follow Nicola's point, thank you for being so accommodating for what the ambitions are. I think it's a really great proactive step from the board to really showcase what is important to us and then help present it to the public in the same respect so we can get some feedback and to align it in a really early stage of the thinking in order to get the best out of the energy that we're going for. So appreciate everyone's contribution and hard work into putting this here and for people. Yeah, we'll see how we go with all the other adversity that we're going through. But nice to have some aspirational things.
Sure, that's good. John?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that as well. It's really important that the community board gets involved in these projects at an earlier stage and ensure that the Clutha's desires and wants are actually acknowledged at a wider level. QLDC, and this has been a great way of doing it. It does really empower the community board, but we really appreciate the time and effort you spent helping us prepare that system. Thank you.
I'm going to sort of put my performing arts in there, so I'm going to take up my community board here. And so thank you for actually acknowledging the performing arts centre, which at this moment is everyone's imagination and nowhere else, but it's really great to see the money to have the community support in the way that it ends up with. And I put my board hat back on.
Just one more affirmation. Slightly different angle though, just to say the other thing that this has given us the opportunity for is to put things in an integrated holistic perspective. So for example, we know from a funding perspective, there are a number of specific line items like the JE or the lakefront development plan or town center development. But from our perspective, in our thinking, in our planning, and our prioritizing, we know that just reinvigorating, making that whole town center a vibrant place to be is going to require resource and funding. We're quite interested and committed to seeing that happen. So that's the other sort of just lens through which to view that priority list for the benefit of the work with this for the first time.
Going to move to the motion. Right. Good luck. So Kathy would like to move that the prioritisation project for 2026-27 annual plan is discussed, that we note the contents of the report, we recommend to council what's in the report. We note that any funding through the Wānaka sales reserve has to come back through the community board, and we note the amendments as I had tabled for 8.1b and 8.3 as previously shared with you, and add those into the minutes if needed. We've got a seconder for Cody. Warner, who I think Kathy moved.
Yeah.
Second.
Yeah.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried that unanimously. Cheers, Catherine. Thank you. Roger, good to see you again. Just moving to item 7, which is literally a stone's throw away, just there. So, an easement to help the new pop-up development to link into some wastewater and sewage.
So the report in front of you is for a temporary wastewater easement. Scaring drive until the circulation comes down the state highway. So they expect it to be required for approximately 2 years.
2 years. Cool.
Yeah. As you say, from what we see.
Yes, it's just out the window.
Have to take questions.
Anyone have any questions around this? Feels like it's pragmatic, but there's really good feedback from the community here, of actually having something to sort of gravitate around from a social perspective, and so the pop-up's been great for Stu and his team have made that happen. It's a pragmatic way to sort of ensure that things guide between now and 3 years from now. Who would like to move? So Nikki Glegg is going to move that we note the contents of the report and that we recommend to council that this is fully approved as it was through the 5. Would anyone else like to second that? So Brady is seconding that. All those in favour? Aye. Anyone against? Great. So we carry that as well. So thanks for that. Thanks for bringing that taken together. Okay, item 8.
So today the Community Board is being asked to decide whether to approve in principle stage 1 mountain bike trails on the reserve subject to the wider trail plan being approved. And this decision is coming to you following this Community Board's request in September for consideration of the initial trails ahead of the full trail plan and following Wānaka-Upper's request in the public forum at that meeting for this to happen. Approving in principle stage 1 trails now prioritises the use of these trails for mountain biking, but still allows consideration of integration of the wider trail plan, and would allow Wānaka to start the resource consent process with the aim of mountain biking to begin next summer. For the new Community Board members, I thought I'd just provide a quick recap of how we've got here. Council adopted the Mountain Reserve Management Plan in April after 2 years of development. The Reserve Management Plan does support mountain biking. In May, we briefed the board on developing an integrated trail plan, and in September, we came to you for some direction on the level of engagement to undertake on the trail plan. So just being clear today is not revisiting that reserve management plan, that provides that direction for reserve decision making, but it's the decision of whether to approve those stage 1 trails ahead of the wider trail plan. I would like to acknowledge that since this report was written, we have received the draft concept trail plan from Tracks Trust and Wānaka, which we didn't have at the time of writing this paper. So that provides a bit more direction on what the overall approach around new walking and biking trails could look like. So we'll now be considering that alongside the other trail requests that we had to consider that against the reserve management plan objectives and policies. And we aim to bring a draft trail plan to this Community Board in February for discussion. So if the the stage 1 trails are approved in principle today, there's still quite a bit of work to be done before any trail building would actually happen in the reserve. Resource consent process would have to be undertaken, and the parks team will continue to be working with Wānaka to put in place an MOU to agree the management of the reserve as well. So I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm going to start. I'm going to speak as a regular walker of Mount Iron, including at 7:30 this morning, back down. I'm a person that enjoyed biking on Mount Iron for 5 years with the landowner's consent. So I know these tracks particularly well, the ones that are going to be reinstated. I also speak as the legal owner of the horse. I just wanted to celebrate our wonderful community groups, our volunteer that create community infrastructure, make the Upper Clutha such a great place to live. I think of Rotary, and I think of Lions, and I think of the Wilding Pine Group there, I think of the Upper Clutha Tracks Trust, and I also think of Wānaka, and I think of that club of over 1,000 members who have raised money and delivered the likes of the Gun Road bike park for kids, the Hawea bike park, the Kirimoko trails, and the $130,000 that they raised and invested in reimagining Lismore Park not so long ago. I'm really conscious of the fiscal challenges that are facing QLDC, things like the rates cap and their headroom and everything else like that. I think we should be really, really grateful for the partners that we have, our community group partners in the Wānaka-Upper, including Wānaka. I feel that we have a responsibility to empower them and to make their lives easier for them and their volunteer teams. In December 2021, when we purchased Mount Iron as a recreation reserve, kids asked me, Simon, can we have a bike on the recreation reserve now? Back in December 21, I said, hopefully soon, have some patience, kids. So they waited. So in November 2023, we asked for some early community engagement. We had 870 pins placed on that map. 367 of those were in support of developing on Mount Iron. Kids said to me, can we buy on Mount Iron now? And I said, no, kids, patience. In November 2024, we asked for feedback and submissions, and we received 446 submissions, of which 245 were in support of mountain biking. Surely we can ride now, said the kids. I said, please be patient. So 4 years since purchase, we have another opportunity to actually support these youths, because they're no longer kids anymore, because it's been 4 years. And that's the decision that we have. We've got an established community group who's invested in ecological and landscape plans on their behalf, they've resourced that, they've fundraised for that, and they're prepared to fundraise for resource consent construction costs to remediate historic bike tracks. I know that because I used to bike them. To take advantage of the seasonality to deliver community benefit in 2026 and not in 2028. But then the question's asked, how can we be prioritising one group over another? But currently it's only prioritising one group, and that's walkers. I'm not really happy with that, because I walk this morning and I walk all the time as well. There is a large walking network on the mountain already. And before the trail plan, after the RMP was done, signed off, and before the trail plan was almost even talked about, we put in a new walking track. We put in a whole route up with Mount Iron. And that was a mixture of existing tracks and new tracks. So there's already precedent for prioritising one group over the others, and that was walkers, and it's a fantastic track. And there's reasons why it was done, and they're all good reasons, but it was done. Chair of the community of the Upper Tracks Trust, Dave Howard, said that this makes sense for where this is the perfect place for bikers, well, this is where bikes should be, and that walking tracks should be added alongside the stage one. So again, I think there's an equity already there, but it's not the inequity that people talk about. There is always going to be people walking in all parts of Mount Iron. That's the nature of it. Because it is Kanuka and sparse, other than the bluffs, there will always be people saying, I walk there. And that's great, but that is not a reason for precluding a certain section of Mount Iron being set aside for bike paths. We can't, for biking, we can't say because someone walks there, because people walk everywhere. But if you look at the heat maps that were produced in the draft of the Upper plan that we received, it shows that about 95% of walkers go up the main route and down the other side. You can tell that from the heat map there. So that is where people say that there is walking. People say, they made it very clear to us that those routes should not be shared. And in RMP, we were very clear that there is tracks there and trails that will be for walking only, and that's what's hard-coded into the RMP. We cannot say that because some people walk in certain areas of Mount Iron, we can't build bike tracks there, because that means that there will be no bike tracks at all in Mount Iron. I haven't got long to go. I'm concerned about horse riding, and the reason I'm concerned about horse riding is because there was an opportunity during a 2-year consultation process for equestrian users to submit. There were only 5 out of 870 pins put on for horses, 0.5%. There were only 2 submissions that supported horse riding out of 500, 0.4%. the time to advocate for horse riding, when people that are advocating for horse riding and submitted on other things but didn't submit on horse riding, was during a public consultation that we spent 2 years consulting on. I'm really concerned about horse riding as an owner of horse and a daughter that rides a horse. With dogs, with runners, with walkers, with bright jackets, with blindfolded, leading spooky horses with no secure float parking, I don't believe it's practical. And this comes from someone that searches far and wide for a daughter going horse riding. It is not practical. And I'm concerned, and I don't actually believe that those advocating actually think that it's practical as well. I actually believe there's another way of pushing horse riding. It's been suggested to me that horse riding is actually not a motor vehicle. I find it very ironic that this is a recreation reserve where kids are already wanting to build bike tracks and we're damping them down. But one of the reasons we shouldn't be doing this and formalising this is for car parking. It's just, it just blows my mind that here we are as a community organisation trying to advocate for kids and for youth and for riders to enjoy a recreation reserve, but it comes back down to car parking. We look at Turamoko, which has got kids biking all the time. There is no challenges with car parking around Turamoko. I don't believe it's going to be an issue. If the crow flies, it's about 80 metres or 100 metres away from the Aubrey Road bike path. There is a cut through that goes through between two sections. It goes straight on the Hindus Drive and then up there. We've been outshone by Queenstown. They're developing new bike tracks, they're developing new infrastructure, they're getting known for that. They are well ahead of us. Yet I haven't seen council blurring the lines between governance and management and getting involved in design and location of biking and walking tracks and QLDC reserves like Ben Lomond and Corona Creek. So I feel that if it's good enough for governance on the Queenstown side of things to say, actually, we set the scene and the strategy and we start to do the operational thing, I think that's the case for here as well. Two final points. Clause 6.8.2 of the Reserve Management Plan requires us to enable the implementation of bike trails. Stage 1 is the best place to do that. And for that reason, after hearing from everyone, I'm going to be suggesting that we change the resolutions from stage 1 in principle to simply agreeing stage 1 and to allow the bike worker to proceed. For them to choose to if they want to, and when it's right, to wait for resource consent. Thank you. John, do you want to speak?
Yeah, you've covered all of the things that I wanted to say, but I will just run through with what I've been thinking about over the last week since reading this report, and I did carry the recreation portfolio on the community board. So the Mountain was purchased and designated as a recreation reserve. The Reserve Act of 1997, Section 17, sets out the purpose of the recreation reserves for the purpose of providing areas for recreation and sporting activities and the physical welfare and enjoyment of the public, and for protecting the environment and future of the countryside, with the emphasis on retention of open space and outdoor recreation activities, including recreational tracks in the countryside. Following the purchase, extensive consultation was undertaken to develop a reserve management plan. As Simon said, 870 pin drops on reserve map, 581 posted comments and in-person interaction, and 3 public workshops. In the formal consultation, there were 446 submissions on a draft plan, with 379 supporting it, 45 opposed and 22 neutral. Last night I went through all those submissions again. I've got a different figure from Simon. I believe that 281 supported it, reading the details of the comments rather than just the staff note on the side. Supporting well-designed biking tracks separated from walkers. 36 opposing the biking tracks. However, it's possible that I've missed some, so even if you triple that number, there's still an overwhelming clear majority A hearing was held and submitted being able to speak to the submissions, and an amended plan was approved by the Community Board and then by full council. The adopted plan facilitates the creation of separated biking tracks subject to the terms of the Reserve Management Plan. Reserve Management Plan does not require a trails master plan to be prepared. New walking and biking tracks can be approved right now. However, it's good practice to consider the reserve as a whole, as how well separated walking and biking tracks may develop over the next 20 to 30 years. The plan that the track does is prepared. If you look at it, you think, oh my God, it's covered in tracks. That's what might happen in the next 20 to 30 years. It's the same with the CMS process when we had to appeal the conservation management strategy. You had to look at everything that might be covered in that term. It's not all going to turn up overnight, if at all. We now have a request before us to approve, in principle, the Stage 1 mountain bike trail, subject to the approval of the Mountain Bike Trail Plan. So let's unpick exactly what that means. Firstly, it allows resource applications to be prepared and submitted. In principle support of the land manager, council, will be a requirement for the application. The application will be accepted if they don't have the in-principle support of the landowner. So we need that in-principle support just for resource consent application to be lodged. The consent, if approved, will allow for final track realignments required either by an ecologist report or as a result of the outcome of the trail plan. A resource consent application is likely to take 3 to 4 months once prepared. It's not going to happen overnight. Secondly, if consent is granted, it potentially allows the construction to start in winter 26, subject to the Mountain Trail Plan being approved, as per the motion before us. If it's still unapproved, they have an option to come back to the board and request a specific approval to go ahead at that time. It does not allow the immediate construction of any track or anything other than resource consent being applied for. It should be further noted that parks have the ability to stop any development at any time, but they are the controlling body for the reserve. I would argue also that it does not disadvantage other users, as it's only a consenting process still subject to the trails plan should the board choose to approve one. It could be argued that the biking community of the current group that is disadvantaged, as there's already existing walking tracks, none of which have been suggested would be accessible to bikes. We specifically in the Reserve Management Plan excluded those because there was a clear requirement that they be separated. I would also note, like Simon, there's been a new walking track on our line created since the purchase. I would suggest that there's been substantial consultation on this issue, and that what we're now being asked to approve in this motion is simply to sort of do in-principle approval to allow a specific planning process for these potential tracks to be prepared. Having said that, I would also support Simon's proposal to the motion, but if that doesn't succeed, I strongly think we should support the motion as approved. It's only providing the ability to progress with the plan thing so that if it is approved for the final track plan, it's not delayed and we're not losing another year for that to take place for the public to enjoy those tracks.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
sorry, I've got a comment on the table. I've got the question as well. I'll start the question maybe.
So what was it? Start?
I'll start with the questions.
Okay, sorry.
The primary for me is around safety. Am I not loud enough?
Just so you can speak, that would be great.
Yeah, so the plan, obviously the reserve management plan is a framework for decision making and it helps us to balance all the competing values and the needs of So one of them in here is that we basically don't create shooting trails unless they need to be safe. What I haven't seen anywhere from Wānaka-Upper from the start is anything around the safety of what's proposed and how we're going to mitigate into shared trails with potentially motorised e-bikes and walkers and crossing points. So whether it's downhill trails in particular, cross walking trails, and I guess the potential for bikers at speed to go off course onto other parts of the network. Have you got a safety?
Yeah, I think actually we might pass to Stephen so you can talk about how we manage that and the wider network at the moment. So
Yeah,
how-
at a high level.
Yeah, specifically for this, these trails, how will we manage that? And have we been over and walked in?
So at a high level, we've had those discussions, and I've been on site with Ian and Dave and walked over some of the trail, and we've talked about some of the solutions that are available for some of those things that we've implemented in other high-use areas. Wooden barriers, we can do design on the trail to actually change the speed of the exit of the trail to where you would join onto a shared use trail. Through vegetation, through planting and vegetation removal, you can add safety improvements. There's lots of detailed design things we can do to work around some of the safety signage, that sort of stuff.
And so I remember when we took on the reserve, so there are a lot of questions around safety and for council as well. When we took on the reserve, and one of the first things that occurred was, or one of the first conversations we had was cracking into putting some safety stuff because of potential liability for the council on some of the trails where there were drop-offs, I think. Have we looked at, and is there any risk of liability? We're talking about downhill trails at grade 4 and 5, potentially mixing with other users. Have we looked at any risk of liability?
We would look at that as a part of the further, much more detailed design. When we would sign those individual trails off, we would look at that and work through that and ensure that it was all good.
Okay. Emergency services. Have we engaged with, because obviously biking is a risky sport, and I could go into Lismore Park, within a week it's been 2 weeks of biking here. It's just inherent in the activity. Have we engaged with emergency services around their thoughts around how they would manage if this becomes a popular downhill?
Currently, we have not from parks. I'm not sure if bikes might have done, but that's a conversation that can be had and we can work with them.
Okay, and just for the last question, go for ages, but there's a lot that still, hasn't been worked through. It's around, it's just gone from
You're thinking about
it may come to me as a different
ambulances, you're thinking about emergency
No,
services.
it was just around a comment in there that the wider trail network we won't be engaging with the community on that. I'm just wondering where that decision came from, and
I'm happy to clarify.
Yeah.
So it's not that we won't be. So we came to the community board in September to get some direction on that, and the direction was to engage with the key stakeholders and reserve users, and that is a commitment that will be undertaken, but that there be significant engagement on the reserve management plan itself. And so there wasn't a need for example, we'll put it up on Let's Talk and give people the opportunity to engage for a couple of months, but we will be and have been engaging with the stakeholders.
so presumably if you're not going wider and you're relying on the RMP and engagement on that, it's very, very important to make sure that we assess any proposal in the reserve track network against all of the policies in there and make it very clear where there's alignment and where there's not. Because we haven't got that for this particular staff have confirmed that they believe the lines, but we haven't got any detail on where it does and where it doesn't. And for me that's problematic. Because this is that framework for making a decision that, will meet the needs of everybody. Anyway, look, just a few comments that it's kind of covered off in what I've said here. I feel like what we really want to do is speed something up for a few months for a subset of the users of the reserve. When we have a reserve management plan that is designed to help us manage the competing needs and values I'm struggling to understand how much I would feel about this and when trails should be and when they shouldn't be. There is so much that I don't know. I don't feel I can make a decision that prioritises these particular trails ahead of all the other users that are mentioned in the plan, including caravan and horse riding, rock climbing, walkers. I just, for the sake of a few months, I don't see that there is a downside really to waiting and developing an integrated plan and considering all these safety and liability considerations as a whole, so that we meet the purpose of the reserve, or the vision, I should say, the RMP, which is to unite the community, not divide it. It's supposed to be about uniting and protecting different values and needs. I feel integrated and taking time to do that definitely
And I'm really aware of the consultation and the excellent two-year consultation that's gone forward. I also understand the conversation with Dave Cat that in many ways what we're being asked to do today, and a lot of the questions that come up are ideally addressed in a workshop, but there is, but because there is a desire to move on really the whole reserve management plan to get some things happening. That's why we're talking about it today. So I very much came from a perspective, for the sake of a few months, why can't we wait sort of an approach to start with? But as I did my deep diving, I came to understand that in many ways, I mean, the integrated trail plan that we're all talking about isn't actually specified in the reserve management plan, I believe. Whereas the reserve management plan, which is the backbone of what we're supposed to be considering likely, is all about enabling all sorts of recreation activities. So what we don't, so really what that tells me is it's fine to support different ones as they're ready in terms of planning, however, that they need to be cognizant that they need to work together. So that's what I have in my head as I thought about this and as I've been asking questions. I had some concerns, so the timing of that in what we're referring to as the integrated trail plan. When you look at the draft plan with the Tracks Trust and our contract done together with council, I understand, or is it now being further developed in the itself as that's sort of integrated draft plan, I guess, that exists so far. And it's like it gives me comfort to know that those groups are working together, because that's what I want to see over time, is the collaboration and the groups who are involved, and there will be many over time. I take the point that we are talking about really long term, and so any decision we make in the short term, I don't want to affect the long term. I had some logical concerns, and I looked at what has happened so far. So there is already a geological report that Wi-Fi completed, QLDC has got one underway, and the resource consent would rely on those ecological reports. So I guess what I'm saying is I had quite a number of concerns at the outset of this consideration, and one by one I feel they have been alleviated, but with the most comforting piece being that if we approve in principle that it's subject to approval of the Wānaka-Upper trail plan, when that does exist, which from what I hear, although it has been delayed a number of times and that has affected some groups' desire to move on this faster, that is actually, I'm going to hold you to it, is actually just around the corner, as in February workshop, as in the next, hopefully, looking forward to, etc. So that's what gives me comfort, that I would be comfortable. I would be more comfortable with the principle, however, than as opposed to being comfortable with at this point in time. So, yeah, that's just a bit of explanation of where I'm coming from. I'm trying to see this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I can't agree. Is integrated trail plan, is that actually in the RMP? The really integrated trail plan?
No.
So we've got to be careful with creating this concept of this, and because I think we just have to be a little bit careful, because I've just did the search and I think I can't see integrated pop up. Okay. Yeah, so I think we just have to be careful that we're not sort of interpreting the RMP and using language that's how far through the ecological plan have you had any interim updates from your consultants around the ecological aspects that could blow this out of the water? Or?
Yeah, so they are on track to provide a draft to us by Christmas, which is next week now, right? So we have had some interim comments from them, and it does broadly align with the ecological report that Wānaka-Upper had. But those kind of seepage, wet, open areas are actually really important habitats on that land, and that we would really like to keep the trail building out of those areas. And you would have seen on the stage 1 trail that Wānaka have already amended some of theirs, and that, you know, they may recommend further amendments, but at this stage they haven't indicated it would be oh no, absolutely nothing in that area at all. It would be more managing those ecological impacts and potentially mitigating.
Thank you. Chris?
Appreciate that slight set advice desire to get things underway sooner rather than later. But one thing I want to know is if we say yes to option one, are we obliged to say yes to the trails on this map that we have in front of us?
Stage one?
Yeah.
So sorry, just to clarify, are you saying that approval, are you asking if approval in principle means that you're basically agreeing to those trails? Yes, effectively. In principle, yes.
Being the only remaining person that was on the committee that put the management plan together, one of the things that we consistently said, although it's not mentioned consistent or regularly throughout the plan, is section 6.8.4. We basically say that in all circumstances we should consider provide for separated walking and biking trails unless shared use is deemed appropriate and safe. So I would suggest that there is some of these, particularly the blue line, with the switchbacks and that sort of thing over a four-wheel drive track, which is really quite handy for walkers, that isn't a safe way or a safe place to cross that particular trail. And that if we say agreement in principle, I don't agree with that particular one in principle, simply because I think that
particular trail.
Yeah, I think it conflicts with that separated and safe. So I guess that where my issue is that all of our discussions have always been that we should make it as much of it as possible to keep cyclists and walkers separate. I take Simon's point that most walkers go in very different places, but there are certain ones like this, that four-wheel drive track, if you like to call it that, we've got those switchbacks which go over that 6 or 8 times or something. And I think that's just asking for problem, should we say. So if we're agreeing in principle and including in the agreement in principle that these tracks are agreed to, I have an issue with that being,
Can I try the point of clarification? Those uphill tracks and the switchbacks across the four-wheel drive, that is recommended as an uphill biking trail only. So the suggestion is that shared use would be appropriate because those people biking would be only biking uphill, and so they are obviously travelling at a slower speed. The recommendation here is that the other trails would be a downhill priority trail, where there's potentially more safety issues with bikes travelling faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think any design needs to take into account that in an ideal world, walk would never see cyclists and bicycles. I mean, that's not going to be possible, but I think we need to mitigate issues as much as possible.
I understand too, what we're recommending is approval in principle. Okay, so, and with the trail plan being yet to be approved, so we could look to address that particular little thing with approval in principle when you're looking at the trail plan.
I think the other thing too is to make sure the members of the public are aware of when a trail is approved, it's being designated or designed for, so that they know something, you start having two-way traffic on and uphill traffic.
They can be quite comfortable with it. I think it's in their best interest not to go down a uphill track.
Well, yeah, the traffic lights will work.
Yeah, well, maybe traffic lights, but probably not on that night, it's not in the RMP. Okay.
Passionate topic, very emotive. I totally get it. Had a lot of questions, have all been answered. I think around delay and resource consents, I mean, personally, it feels a little like a mad Christmas rush, and Christmas will happen, everyone will stop again, and then we'll start again in the new year, and it feels a bit like a push. And I totally see a lot of the concerns and problems, I guess. For me, I feel like there's a lot that can be smoothed by Wānaka going to Hidden Hills group, a question group, and really bringing them on the journey, having that to improve the social license and things going forward. I definitely want to, my guiding principle has been that kids don't see the process, they don't see the approvals, they don't see the consents, they just see whether there's bike tracks or not. And I think the best thing that we can do for kids is not sit around and keep asking them what they want, but actually just providing things for them, dumping a bunch of dirt and, I built a lot of the jumps probably legally down gun road when I was a kid. I don't know who approved it or what the other stuff was. But yeah, I had that sentiment. I think working on the reserve management plan, we had a lot of thought through the structure of how this works systemically, so I'm quite trusting in the process that as this gets tested with that, from our perspective, we've done the due diligence to smooth a lot of those concerns out around safety and management of risk. So I guess my point is that I, like with Kathy, support the in-principle approval. I think my recommendation to the groups is to bring as many people on the journey for the long-term social license and to not start this with a very polarizing issue. Because I think it's great that we have such a motivated group that wants to provide things to the community at their own costs and effort. And I really want to support that as much as possible. But again, there's win-win scenarios here. This is not a or. This is a it's a very awesome spot. So I think it's reasonable.
Nicholas.
It's not really fair that I'm last.
Well, you said you're used to
We've had about 30 minutes now of this. I think there's no denying that we obviously are going to have biking on there. So it's not, but I do share the concerns here. I think, what alleviates my concerns is probably that Wānaka has still has to get resource consent. What I see the issue is perhaps if they are already building these trails, which, I mean, they've been built, they are already there, but as we can see from what Guy showed us, it's not really fair. And what are we going to do to mitigate if we approve in principle? How are we going to communicate that message that it doesn't mean get up there, get on your bikes, and and that we're going to work with all other stakeholders. So I think that's something that we need to consider and avoid that misunderstanding that bikers take preference. Because it was quite true that you did do Little Mount Time, so walkers with that goes.
With discretion, we didn't do anything that was done. Didn't come for approval or anything like that. It was done. So, it wasn't approved. Not that it was unapproved, but it wasn't tested.
And just to get it clear, so when the full, not integrated, but the mountain bike and walking trail is done, is that going to come to the public or just stakeholders, and who the stakeholders are? Because these concerns about, I don't really want to have, but it's not, I'm sure a lot of people, and on that RMP, a lot of people said they don't really want to share parts with bikers, let alone maybe horses. So I just think it would be, I know we've done consultation, but not on the actual trails. So I think that is a really important point to go back to the community and make sure people feel that it's going to be safe, those crossings, because there's a lot more than I expected. Where it's going to, walkers and bikers are going to interact. So will it come back to the community or?
Yes, that is a question.
Yes,
there is a
no,
question.
I'm hoping I'm getting the right answer for what you're asking. So it won't be going back to the community at large, but we will be engaging with those key stakeholders, and that includes those groups that currently operate on the reserves. There's a number of recreation groups and conservation groups that currently operate and have agreements, and the neighbouring communities.
So what about me, walker, average Joe?
So in this process, the Appalachian Trust are representing walkers, and they have been engaging with runners and walkers and intend to do more of that. Now that there's kind of some lines on the map, it becomes a bit easier when you can talk about things and it's a bit more specific and tangible.
Okay. So we'll have to engage with the Tracks Trust to make sure that, just because if we're going to then approve it, I just want to make sure that
and that's been a really difficult consideration because there are groups who are, have very well organised, representative groups, but we know walkers, there's a lot of individuals and they don't have a group per se that represent them, so that's why we wanted to make sure that those things were heard.
And then, sorry, that just sparked another question. Are we approving the final plans or is that the resource consents?
So, so the trail plan will come back to the community board and effectively you're providing landowner approval, so effectively what it is. And then any group that wants to then build trails will still need to apply for the Sorry, did you want to add something?
I was just going to add, there's different levels of engagement, and so the engagement can be what we're not going to go for a full engagement like the levels you mentioned, like that. So it's more touch and base with the key stakeholders, and maybe our engagement will represent those community groups, and they'll engage with those community groups, and start to take the tracks places, doing that, for example. And obviously, quite one of the representing the market.
Is there any support for something like balance that the motion be changed to approve stage 1 without any qualifiers and without any reference to entrance? Is there going to be any support for that?
I think in general, it's in principle, from my perspective, it's a good middle ground because I do think there's plenty of evidence to show that this is being favourable and there are other considerations that we're trying to be cautious of, so that's where I stand.
Has anyone got any other questions or observations for the team?
Just around, let's just say that they go out for legal consent and the result of that process is that the trail changes to some extent. At what point do they need to come back and get a different landowner approval if it goes to a different area? Is that a thing or not? Just how much deviation is?
We're just going to grab Dom from the Parks and Maintenance, so I got knowledge and research on it. Oh, so would that be?
Dom, I'll call, let's go through the chair. Dom?
Yep. Yeah, just ultimately, legal consent is going to be for trails, for example, is going to be relying on ecological and landscape assessments, as well as park input. And park input in this instance is landowner approval. So those are going to be the key factors. We can't really make any predetermination of what a legal consent decision is going to be because that's a separate arm of council as regulatory function.
Yeah, it's just the deviation again that went into your area and someone else was wanting. I don't know, I'm just guessing what might come out of the process and whether we can do it.
There's a question is when, if it deviated so much, what would happen to the resource consent
What would happen
process?
to the landowner approval? Because we're approving a map in a certain location. If the resource consent took it somewhere else. For example, if we decided on health and safety that then wouldn't be a shared park and it would go somewhere completely different, well, we then need to approve it again.
So that would be a sort of, again, the parks planning team would be involved in that resource consent process. And if for some reason that path was taking quite a different route because of some resource consent process, then yes, we likely would have to provide updated landowner approval for that realignment, and that would be an internal discussion whether it's of a grand enough deviation that we need to come back to this group or not.
Good one. Good question. Do you want to move that? What did you want? No, I don't want to move that one, but so I'm going back to the papers here. So, Cody is moving that we don't come into the report an improvement principle stage of the mountain bike trails in Mount Iron subject to approval for the Iron Trail Plan. We've got a second for that. That's John. All those in favour? Aye. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Carried. Fantastic. Thank you, team. Thank you for your hard work. We will continue this dialogue and this evening delivery. A couple of other items before we close the meeting. The last item is the Chair's report. Thank you for everyone's contribution to that. When we are doing Chair's report, reading out through the chief's report, as it's my report, I will move that it be, the contents of the report to be accepted. Do I have a second for that? Thank you, Kathy. All those in favour? Carried. We're going to conclude the meeting with a karakia whakamiritanga, and would you like to do that for us? John?
So wairua te ara whakatā koe ara e rongo whakairia atu ki runga ki a tina hui e tāi.
Kia ora, I'm closing the meeting at 11:53. Thank you to